To become a master builder, an architect must not only be possessed of the theoretical knowledge of engineering and details of building construction, but he must become the deviser of the method of construction. In numerology, number 4 carries upon the different set of vibration energy mediums from number 6, 7, and 8. Like number 4 proposes, it is connected with stability, a foundation for nearly everything. It is also one that is connected with royalty, completion, and traditional hierarchy. In 1776, during the American Revolution, British forces under General William Howe defeat Patriot forces under General George Washington at the Battle of Brooklyn in New York. At the Battle of Brooklyn, the Americans suffered 1,000 casualties to the British loss of only 400 men. The Redcoats, on September 15th, captured New York City. The 1976 World Series matched the Cincinnati Reds against the New York Yankees. After spending the past 2 years sharing home field with the New York Mets at Shea Stadium, the 1976 Yankees returned home to a rebuilt and modified Yankee Stadium. George Steinbrenner had now owned the team for 4 years. Of the Reds, Pete Rose, Ken Griffey, and Joe Morgan combined power, 27 homers and 111 RBIs, and speed, 67 stolen bases, from third spot in batting order. On October 21st, 1976, it ended at 2:36, a score of 7-2 in front of 56,700 spectators. The United States Bicentennial was a series of celebrations during the mid-1970s, peaking on Sunday, July 4th, 1976, with the 200th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. The bicentennial was celebrated only a year after the withdrawal from Vietnam in 1975, and the Ford administration stressed the themes of renewal and rebirth based on a restoration of traditional values, giving a nostalgic and exclusive reading of the American past. December 31st, 1975, the eve of the bicentennial year, President Gerald Ford recorded a statement to address the American people by means of radio and television. Presidential Proclamation 4411 was signed as an affirmation to the Founding Fathers of the United States principles of dignity, equality, government by representation, and liberty. Festivities included parades, fireworks, and a fleet of tall-masted sailing ships gathered in New York and Boston. This was indeed a very special time for the children of the Founding Fathers of America, a chance to unify under patriotism and help pave the way to a bright and prosperous future for America. And there was no better place than New York City to hold such events. After all, it was Washington's chessboard back in the day. And to gain the watchful eyes of not only the American public, but the world at large, a brilliant new game was about to begin. One so intriguing, so evil, that it would be hard-pressed to not evoke some type of emotional response between the ones on the board and the world outside looking in. This was a game of deception, sadness, mystery and hope. A gift delivered all the way from the top, from old Uncle Sam himself. This was a builder's game of number 44, a 44 caliber killer, the son of Sam. In this documentary, we will be presenting the truth behind the son of Sam, known to the world as the 44 caliber killer. We will be including as much information as we were able to present sensibly for others to follow along. You will see how this could not have been the work of one lone man operating, and was a network of highly skilled players who turned New York City into one giant chessboard, used to feed the pyramid of power. It shows how David Berkowitz was used by these players, how he ultimately took the blame for all of the crimes. His crimes cannot directly be accounted for in the grand scheme of things. However, in his own words, he admitted to killing 2 people. We would also like to extend prayers, love, and condolences to all of the victims, their families, and anyone else who may have been wronged or harmed during this time period. As well, I feel it important to point out that although this ritual was of historical significance and was planned for quite some time, these types of occurrences happen on a daily basis, somewhere in the world, and they have been happening for thousands of years, in some capacity. Trust in God, trust in Christ, for evil has but a short time, and we must remain forever vigilant. David Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June 1st, 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He was born to Betty Falco, who conceived him with a married man named Joseph Kleinman. Between 0 and 17 months, he was put up for adoption. His adoptive parents named him David Richard Berkowitz. He was above average intelligence, yet he lost interest in school frequently. Berkowitz eventually got involved in petty larceny and pyromania. However, his ill behavior never led to legal troubles or impacted his school records. At 14, Berkowitz's adopted mother, Pearl, died of breast cancer, changing the dynamic between him and his adopted father, Nathan. Though later in life, David affectionately speaks of his father's love never swaying, even through the darkest of times. At 18, in 1971, David Berkowitz joined the Army and served in South Korea. He was assigned as a clerk typist to headquarters companies of the 7th and 17th Infantry Divisions. His friends began noticing a change in his letters to back home, more confusing and incoherent. But soon after Korea, in the letters, Berkowitz, who had enlisted as a super-militaristic hawk, began writing letters of a dovish, more revolutionary tone, referring to odd names and phrases his friends never understood. He started experimenting with drugs and felt like he was part of some type of game. After several months, he was sent to Fort Knox, Kentucky, living the basic Army-based lifestyle. He started attending the Beth Haven Church. Ones there who knew him said he would attend both Sunday morning and evening services, Wednesday evening prayer meetings, Thursday evening soul winners class, and door to door for his faith. He was also baptized. Just about every time the church door was open, he was there, said a frequent member of the congregation. He was a really nice guy, friendly to everybody, talked a lot, sang songs, and played his guitar. He was honorably discharged in 1974, and during his 3 years of service, he was regarded as one of the best marksmen in the Army. He returned to New York City, started going to college, and took a job as a security guard, eventually making it to the post office working nights to help him get through college, just trying to begin a new life himself. In January 1976, Berkowitz moved into a home in New Rochelle owned by Jack Cassera. Cassera was co-owner of the Neptune Moving Company. Coincidentally, in February of 1977, an employee of Neptune Moving Company went on a rampage, killing 5 men, wounding 5 more, during a 10-hour siege at the warehouse, ultimately ending his own life. It was said David Berkowitz knew 33-year-old Frederick Cowan, the sharpshooter, briefly. In April 1976, Berkowitz moved to 35 Pine Street in Yonkers to escape the howling from the demons. He began hanging out with John and Michael Carr. John was also in the military. John would spend time in NYC when not back on base in North Dakota. Michael is said to have connections with groups such as the Scientologists and the Process Church. The Scientologists are well known for their mind control techniques and connections with MKUltra experiments. The Process Church was a UK invention of British couple Marianne MacLean and Robert de Grimston. They'd promote their pyramid of hokey spirituality and had many delusional followers up until the disorganization of their church around 75-76. David would tag along with the Carrs and participate in the consumption of drugs and perform rituals with others in Untermeyer Park, Yonkers. Samuel Untermeyer was an extremely wealthy American lawyer. Some of the investigations he led formed the groundwork for our Federal Reserve Law, the Clayton Antitrust Law, the Federal Trade Commission Bill and Securities and Exchange Act. He donated his land to the citizens of New York City. Untermeyer Park was a hotspot for satanic activity. Untermeyer himself was said to be a member of the Golden Dawn and rubbed shoulders with the likes of Aleister Crowley. It is said a group of affluent members of society would meet in Westchester County and discuss their satanic plans in secret. However, needless to say, Samuel Untermeyer was a much welcome commodity to the federal monetary regulations and an honored man to many, despite his dark hobbies. In June 1976, he went to Houston, Texas, to visit an Army friend, Billy Dan Parker. John Carr was also said to have been in Houston at the time. While in Texas, David's friend purchased him a .44 caliber Bulldog revolver. Also of interest, at one point John Carr was committed to a mental institution for a while due to strange behavior, which included chanting in an unknown tongue and talking to a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Devil Dog is a nickname for a U.S. Marine. It is said by U.S. Marines to be based on the use of Teufelshunden by German soldiers to describe Marines fighting in World War I. The Devil Dog's nickname for Marines appeared in newspapers in the United States in April 1918. Samuel Carr served from 1792 to 1802 as a captain of cavalry in Albemarle County's 1st Battalion, 47th Regiment, a member of the 1st Elite Corps. Samuel Carr possessed Dunlora and Bear Castle plantations. He was a captain in the Marines at the time of his death, which service in the Revolutionary War may have precipitated. Berkowitz's neighbor was Samuel Carr. He was also John and Michael's father. Wheat Carr was Samuel's daughter, a dispatcher for the NYPD, and proved later on to be quite useful in the apprehension of Berkowitz. The story that has forever been perpetuated was how David was ordered to kill by a demon named Sam, speaking through Samuel Carr's dog Harvey. Samuel Carr reported David's strange, harassing threats towards him and his dog to the police. No one paid him any attention. However, interesting to note was that Carr was a prominent member of the Kiwanis Club, and upon sharing the news within the club, Carr was given a standing ovation by his fellow lodge members, and congratulations on a job well done. What job? We don't exactly know. So what I'm going to do now is try to attempt to show you the numbers associated with these attacks. This wasn't an easy task to do. However, I'm going to do my best, so please bear with me. Donna Laurier and Jody Valente, both 18, were shot on July 29, 1976 at 2860 Boer Avenue, between Mayflower and Pilgrim Avenues, in Pelham Bay, Bronx. A 6-story building with 102 units, built in 1928, within the City Council's District 13. It happened at 1:10 a.m., and it was the 211th day of the year. Here we have July 29th, 1976. Another way to write that is 112. The day of the year is 211. Also, 7 and 29 is 36. Now we're going to take a look at the location. It was Pelham Bay, Bronx. In English ordinal, that's 156. Reverse ordinal, 222. We get 36. 3 plus 6 is 9. Now looking at the date, July 29th, we could write that as 729. That also equals 36. Break it down again. 9. Now going over here and looking at their names, we have Donna Laurier. We have 21 and 26 equals 47. Jody Valente also equals 47. Break those down a little bit further. 7 plus 4 is 11. Now looking at Jody Valente, besides the obvious 911, break that down, we have a 9 and a 2. Now these people are very careful with what they do. So, just to show you some of these techniques, if you divide 2 by 9, 0.222 matches the reverse ordinal 222. However, it goes further. Looking at their ages, both age 18. Break that down. 18 plus 18 is 36. Again, we got another 9. Now if we look at this, how this is 11, and the time of day was 1:10 a.m. We could write that as 11 as well. again with the 2, 2, 2, because there is 3 11s. Matching this 222, also matching the reverse ordinal 222. Looking at the date itself, the 211th day. Another way to write the date, 112, both equals 4, dealing with a 44 caliber killer. That gives us the 44. It's a mirror of itself. Remember, we have 3 11s over on this side. So naturally, we times 11 by 3. 11 times 3 gives you 33. Okay? And do you remember this 36 3 times? We look at 999. Let's flip those upside down. And that leaves us with a 666. And finally, for this attack, 44 Bulldog Revolver, New York, single reduction, 211. That's the day of the year. 212. Remember that number. And remember the 222. I think it's important to take a moment and review a few words and letters left by the son of Sam. To paraphrase one letter, I am deeply hurt by you calling me a women hater. I am not, but I am a monster. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam. I feel like an outsider. I am on a different wavelength than everybody else. Programmed to kill. Papa Sam is old now. He needs some blood to preserve his youth. Because of the apparent Revolutionary War overtone to this entire case, perhaps in observing the word women, we should carefully consider the W and M. Perhaps holding some resemblance to 33. There are 13 anagrams for the word women. Me own, me one, stood out the most. And when we flip the M and make it a W, we are left with we own, we won. Sounds about right as far as our founding fathers would be concerned. And in the fifth letter, again paraphrased, not knowing what the future holds, I shall say farewell, and I will see you at the next job. Or should I say, you will see my handiwork at the next job. Sam's Creation, 44. Here are some names to help you along. The Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, the 22 Disciples of Hell, John Wheaties. The Duke of Death, unfortunately nothing conclusive, though in magic circles the Duke can refer to a spirit who helps one communicate with the dead. The Wicked King Wicker, we can look and see that there is a Wicker Street behind Pine Street where Berkowitz lived. However, observing an ode to Caesar, written by evangelical songwriters John Peterson and Don Wurtzen for a bicentennial musical in 1976, we find some very interesting things. As it is a longer prose, I will only read the key verses. They called him king, they called him tyrant. For self-gain they justified their warrant. At the floor of the Senate, his blood was left pouring. Saddened, the king covered his face from the eyes of the tyrants. They killed the king, and reborn was Caesar, Rome now blessed with a new pleaser. Cheering and shouting, all hail, King Caesar. Octavius arose as Rome's new leader. Caesar refers to the wicker man ritual, where tall statues of the gods were constructed of wicker framework. They would fill these wicker men with humans and set them on fire as a sacrifice. The 22 disciples of hell perhaps was in regards to the Senate 8 of 1789. 8 conscientious senators overcame difficult conditions to reach the nation's temporary capital in New York City. 11 states by then had ratified the Constitution. Out of 22 eligible senators, the Senate needed 12 present to achieve a quorum to conduct business. And then John Wheaties. We know that's referring to John Carr, who even the police concluded after David's arrest, as his sister was named Wheat. And in another letter, Sam writes, "Warning, the streets shall be run with blood. I, David Berkowitz, have been chosen since birth to be one of the executioners for the cult. He who hath eyes, let him see the dead victims. He who hath ears, let him listen to what I say." Aside from the obvious biblical tone to the words, the Masonic Eye of Providence could be being referenced, and one of the 3 precious jewels of a fellow craft Mason is the listening ear. I am still here like a spirit roaming the night, reminiscent of the spirit of 76, a patriotic sentiment that typified the zeitgeist surrounding the American Revolution. David warned, there are other suns out there. God help the world. The following is a transcript of an interview with Berkowitz. You had some connection with the Church of Scientology, did you not? It wasn't exactly that, but I can't go into it. I really can't. Were you connected in any way? Or an adherent or convert of the Church of Scientology? No, not that way. It was an offshoot, fringe type thing. Were John and Michael Carr with the Church of Scientology? Well, not really that church, but something along that line. A very devious group. Did this devious group have a name? I can't disclose it. Roughly how large would you say its membership was? 20? Were they all residents of the New York metropolitan area? No. Were they spread across the nation? Yes. Did they meet on occasion? Yes, but I really can't say more without counsel. And finally, the reading of a letter from David. I really don't know how to begin this letter, but at one time I was a member of an occult group. Being sworn to secrecy or face death, I cannot reveal the name of the group, nor do I wish to. This group contained a mixture of satanic practices which included the teachings of Aleister Crowley and Eliphas Levi. It was, still is, totally blood-orientated, and I am certain you know just what I mean. The Coven's doctrine was a blend of Druidism, the teaching of the Secret Order of the Golden Dawn, black magic, and a host of other unlawful and obnoxious practices. As I said, I have no interest in revealing the Coven, especially because I have almost meant sudden death on several occasions, once by half an inch, and several others have already perished under mysterious circumstances. These people will stop at nothing, including murder. They have no fear of man-made laws or the Ten Commandments.
Looking back, it was all so senseless. You know, being the son of Sam was the biggest waste. It was the biggest lie. That Satan had me totally deceived. I didn't know what I was thinking. I had just been programmed to kill. They were just people. I didn't hate them. I wasn't angry against them. So what did do it? Well, Sam did it through me. He used me. He made me go out there and do it. I did it for him, for blood.
We made a blood pact to serve the devil.
I was chanting the names of Lucifer over and over, and I was calling out to him. I said, son of the morning, and prince, my lord, come into me right now, take control of this vessel. And I felt like I was being emptied of my own personality, and that something else somehow was coming in. We had worshipped a powerful occultic deity named Sam Hain. He is one of the high-ranking demons, and he was the one we used to call upon all the time. And it became somehow abbreviated to Sam. I really thought that I was some kind of soldier in a satanic army, and we had determined to bring New York City to its knees, to initiate a reign of terror. And looking back, it was a tragedy. Innocent lives were lost.
Now, attack number 2. Carl DeNaro, 20, was shot when he and Rosemary Keenan, 18, on October 23, 1976, were parked at 159th and 33rd Avenue in Flushing, Queens. It happened at 1:30 a.m. It was the 297th day of the year, 86 days after the first shooting. So here we show day of the year, 297, days left in the year, 69, another way of writing the date, 33. We're going to go over here and we're going to look at the names of them. Carl DeNaro, Chaldean, is 33. Reverse ordinal, 74. Now here, Carl DeNaro, again, 7 and 3. But we look at the 16 plus 30 plus Rosemary, who's 65. We get a total of 111. Further, Keenan, we get a 23, and we get a 112. Now remember, Donna Laurier and Jody Valente on the 29th of July. That was a 112 as well. Now, February 11th, just something to note, 1977. That's 111 days after Carl was shot. The first attack was on day 211. I will mention February 11th in a few minutes. Go over here, the location, and more about the date. It was in Flushing, 96. Flip that upside down. We have 69. It's like a moment in time. We look at Queens and Flushing itself. Flushing, Queens, 69. Days left in the year, 69. October itself, reverse Sumerian value of 666. Also, full reduction, it equals 33. Now, the day was 297. Days left in the year was 69. Let's divide 69 by 297. What do we get? 0.23. That was the day of the year. The day of October. It happened October 23rd. Now back over here, if we look at the 7 and 3 of Carl Denaro, divide 7 by 3. 2.3, that's 23. We know 2 divided by 3 is 0.666. That's October. Now if we take the 33 from the full reduction value of October and we divide it by the day of the year, 297, we get a 0.111. Now if you look down here, if we take the 111 from Carl and Rosemary's name, we take the 111 from the day calculation, again with the 33. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The location was 159th and 33rd Avenue. Break that down, it equals 15, it equals 6. Divide 6 to 15, we get a 0.4. Time of day, 1:30 a.m. 1 plus 3 is 4. 44 caliber killer. There's your 44 again. Remember the 107. Now I'll explain this February 11th date. So I just wanted to point out, as I was talking about February 11th, 1977, if we look at the daily diary of President Jimmy Carter and we look at the day, February 11th, 1977, we notice that he had a meeting with a particular mayor on that day. Abraham Beam, the mayor of New York. He had a meeting from 11 a.m. to 11:20 a.m. Flip that around to 11, the day of the first attack. This video would never end if I was to cover all the things that I have uncovered. We're talking federal deficits. We're talking lots of things. Something to take note of during this ritual An important constellation was being mirrored below. The Summer Triangle is an astronomical asterism in the northern celestial hemisphere. The defining vertices of this imaginary triangle are at Altair, Deneb, and Vega, each of which is the brightest star of its constellation. Also, what I found interesting was how the altar in a Freemason lodge, when aligning the lights, we see the same triangular formation. So it would indeed appear that the Summer Triangle holds some relevance to ones in these magic circles. James 5:12 shows us how so-called free men, or any other men for that matter, are to not swear upon any oaths. But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath. But let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. But they won't tell you that in the Mason Hall. The brethren will pass before me one by one, and extending their right hand on the hilt of the sword, will say, I vow. Vulpecula is a faint constellation in the northern sky. Its name is Latin for little fox, although it is commonly known simply as the fox. It was identified in the 17th century and is located in the middle of the Summer Triangle. At 24, Vulpeculae is a single yellow-hued star in the northern constellation of Vulpecula. It is faintly visible to the naked eye with an apparent visual magnitude of 5.30. The distance to this star can be estimated from its annual parallax shift, which yields a separation of roughly 440 light-years. Attack number 3, Donna DeMasi, Joanne Lamino, 18, were shot on November 27, 1976. The address was 8331 262nd Street in Belrose, Queens. It happened at 12:30 a.m., and it was the 332nd day of the year, 121 days after the first shooting, and 35 days after the second shooting. November 27th, 76, as we see, 332. Now, the address, 8331 262nd Street, break it down, 6 and 1. Another way to write the date, 61. November 27th, that's the 11th month, 2 plus 7, 9, gives us, flipped around, 9/11. We have this day, 332, just so you understand. Let's divide 332 by 9/11. We get 0.36. That is the combined age of the two victims, 18 plus 18. It happened at 12:30 a.m. There's the 33. Lomino, the last name of one of the victims, itself equals 33. We have 133 and we have another 33. 33 times 2 is 66. The location, Belrose, Queens. Look at Donna DeMasi, Joanne Lamino, 45, 56. Break it down. Again, 9/11. November 27th, another way to write that, 11 plus 27 equaling 38. We see this, we know this. Now we move to DeMasi. Full reduction shows 24. Again, another way to write the date, 24. Donna and Joanne in full reduction equals 44. 44 caliber killer. Remember the 74s. Remember the 107. The world at that time had yet another reason to draw their attention to the Big Apple once more. The New York Yankees were on the move for the pennant, and the number everyone was backing on was number 44. Reggie Jackson, the Major League Baseball player who spent 21 seasons in the majors, most notably with the Oakland Athletics and New York Yankees. Jackson helped the Athletics win 3 consecutive World Series championships between 1972 and 1974, and back-to-back titles with the Yankees in 77 to 78. Dubbed Mr. October, Jackson hit 5 home runs, including 3 in Game 6. In the 1977 World Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, in one of the greatest postseasons of all time, Jackson hit 3 home runs in a row off 3 consecutive pitches from 3 different pitchers at Yankee Stadium in the clinching Game 6 of the 1977 World Series. Almost sounds like pure magic. On to number 4. Christine Freund, age 26, and John Deal were shot January 30th, 1977. They were parked outside of One Station Square in Forest Hills. It was 12:30 a.m., the 30th day of the year, 185 days after the first shooting. So here, just a little breakdown showing you again. Day of the year 30, days left 335. We're going to move down here. Deal, last name, English ordinal value of 30. Day of the year 30. Location, Forest Hills Inn, across the street from the Forest Hills Inn. 81. Another way to write the date, 18. We can flip that around. It actually happened right at One Station Square. Time, 69. If we look at Freund, the last name, it equals 31. Another way to write the date, 31. Combine their names, Freund and Deal, reverse full reduction value of 55. 55. Now, gonna look at this here. The date, January 30th, equals 13. Also, that's like a 31 reversed. And the time of day, 12:30 a.m., 33 again. Over here, Kristen Freund, 88, or 7 when combined with John Deal, reverse full reduction value of 40, again with the 47. We break his name up, John Deal, 20 and 3. 20 divided by 3, 6.66. Found this interesting as well. Kristen Froon ritual murder equals 333 in English ordinal. John Deal 44 killer also equals 333 in reverse ordinal. Combine the values. 333 times 2, 666. I told you the location was Station Square. Not quite 107, still with the 17. Continuing. Just a few other things I wanted to point out. Following Rocky, Chris and Deal trekked the snowy streets to the Wine Gallery restaurant on nearby Austin Street. After a light meal and some Irish coffee, the bundled couple began to walk to Deal's car, which was parked several blocks away at Station Plaza, near the Long Island Railroad tracks. Their next stop was to be a Masonic dance at the hall where they first met 7 years before. As well, this is talking about when Kristen was shot. Deal then glanced around the station square and saw a man entering the Forest Hills Inn and let out a rather interesting cry. Mister, they shot her. They shot my girl. The man stared at Deal and kept going. They shot my girl, Deal yelled again, as two neighbors heard him and phoned the police. Doesn't sound like it was one man when he repeatedly screamed they. There was an interesting drawing left on several letters from the son of Sam. This drawing seems to be unknown to many when researching this case. However, several people seem to believe it is linked to the Goetic circle of black evocation. The symbol was created by Eliphas Levi in the 1800s. He was best known as a French occult author and ceremonial magician. Symbols such as this one have been seen in many circles throughout the world over the centuries, stemming back before the time of the Egyptians. Which brings us to the 47th problem of Euclid, said to be a key proof of the key to geometry. It's the esoteric characteristics, not the mathematical properties, that are the source of its Masonic significance. Pythagoras in 580 BC is generally accredited with this concept. However, proof has been found as far back as Babylon, 1200 to 1400 years before Pythagoras. Pythagoras adhered to the beliefs of the Babylonian, Greek, Egyptian, and Indian mystery schools. The attitudes and beliefs of the Pythagorean sect, which he founded, doubtless reflected those traditions. History also shows that during the latter part of the 17th century AD, a major European revival of Pythagorean and other Gnostic philosophy took place. This time period corresponds to the period during which Freemasonry was emerging. Pythagoreans believed everything in the universe could be represented by numbers, and that nature was a vast arithmetical process. The 47th Euclid is also known as the mousetrap, the bride's chair, the peacock tail, and the windmill. If we examine the prescription For the dimensions of a lodge room, as given by Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia, we find that a lodge should be an oblong square. We find further references to the oblong square in Masonic ritual, having dimensions such that it is 1/3 longer than it is wide, and in other words, a 3x4 rectangle. During circumambulation, one makes a complete circuit around the lodge while keeping the right hand toward the altar. Circumambulation is also called squaring the lodge, and the number of circumambulations is counted based upon the number of times in which the northeast corner is reached. When a candidate kneels at the altar while binding himself to his obligations, he kneels at the center of the diagonal, a place representing birth. It might also be considered that the oblong square, which is 2, 3, 4, and 5 triangles sharing a common diagonal, may express a reflective relationship between the celestial and the earthly, such as that embodied in the Hermetic theosophy that the earthly plane is a reflection of the divine. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above. Here we see some examples of the lodge floor layout, incorporating some of these principles. One of these meanings is that the 3, 4, 5 triangle, which is central to the 47th proposition, represents the philosophical male, female, and the union of the two, or the offspring. This relationship is the basis for the theosophy of the Trinity. When we place the drawing found on the Son of Sam letters, we see how the Masonic Lodge plays an important role here, and how the numbers 47, 74 become very significant. Some examples you may be aware of include 7 years ago, and also Thanksgiving falls on the 47th week of the year. In the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, page 124, the famous Mason Manly P. Hall stated the following: "When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly handle energy." Now we saw many 222s. Looking at some of this Kabbalistic nonsense, Bible wheels, whatnot, people in these circles, they believe 222 reveals a person of the Blessed Trinity, firstborn and blessed. Yes. 222, number 6 to them shows the number of man in the cosmos. 37, the only begotten Son. The number 37 is the ordinal value of wisdom, and in the KJV, the English word wisdom appears 222 verses. .222 is quite significant in this case as well. Now looking at 222 days since the first attack, we have victim number 5, Virginia Voskerichian, 20. She was shot on March the 8th, 1977, she was returning to 6911 Exeter Street. It happened in front of 4 Dartmouth Street in Flushing, Queens, and it was 7:30 p.m. The 67th day of the year. Looking over here, Virginia Voskerichian gives you a total of 88. Another way of writing March the 8th, 77 is 88. Look at her initials, VV, 44. Just a note, 2 of the victims were also named Donna. D is the 4th letter of the alphabet. That too is another 44. Now this happened in Queens. Remember I mentioned the 37? The wisdom. Another way of writing the date, 35. We do VV in Queens. Total 37. It happened at 7:30 p.m. Looking at March 8th, we have 3 plus 8 if we look at this, but we run March and add 8. March has a full reduction value of 25, giving us a total of 33. I'm going to move over here for a minute. If we take 44 and we add it by 67, which is the day of the year this happened on, we get a 111. If you add 2 plus 9 plus 8, that's this one right here, I'm sorry, days left in the year is 298. Add 2 plus 9 plus 8, it equals 19, it's 1. Put these together, again, 222. Now it happened when she was on her way home to Exeter Street. It happened on 4 Dartmouth Street, just around the block. We had 39 plus 24, which is the full reduction values for Dartmouth and Street. 67, day of the year. Now here, the 107 we've seen several times at during the other attacks. 22 divided by 13 is 17. What we're doing here is adding the day of the year to get 13. So there's 1. As I said, it happened on Exeter. She lived on Exeter. She was on her way home in Flushing, Queens. It was 69 and 11, Exeter. 6 plus 9 equals 15. We'll break it down to 6. That's also a 911 upside down. If we do the math on here, it leaves us with 17. Break 17 down and get 8. Now we want to put 8 plus 5, giving us another 13. At exactly 8:28 p.m. on the 13th of July, 1977, 3 lightning bolts struck from a line of sodden black thunderclouds rolling across Westchester County. The bolt severed 3 power lines, 2 connecting nuclear power plants in Westchester with plants in Rockland and Orange counties, one running to the Con Ed substation at Pleasant Valley. That station became quickly overloaded, and within minutes the other lines shut off, tripped by safety switches to prevent them from burning out. Absolutely a 1 in a million coincidence, electrical engineers agreed. If you believe in coincidence, and I certainly do not. Here we show the weather report from Westchester Airport for July 13th, 1977. Steady temperatures of around 74 degrees were recorded, with precipitation showing 0 across the board. I wonder where the thunderclouds were hiding when recording the weather data. Oddly enough, only 2 locations in the city of New York were listed as having power still operating during the blackout. One worth noting would be the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. Pratt Institute is a private university with its main campus in Brooklyn, New York. The school originated in 1887 with programs primarily in engineering, architecture, and fine arts. Comprising 6 schools, the institute is primarily known for its highly ranked programs in architecture, interior design, industrial design, and offers both undergraduate and master's degree programs in a variety of fields, with a strong focus on research. Research funds were granted to the school to help discover new building techniques. By 1963, the Urban Planning Department formed the Pratt Center for Community Development in an attempt to revitalize Pratt's surrounding neighborhood in Brooklyn. Many famous and notable students since the beginning of Pratt graduated from there. Looking through their student literature from 1977 shows some very interesting imagery. And they make no effort to hide what they are really about. The teachers of Pratt are known as programmers, and their students are referred to as programmees. No doubt every effort is made to ensure the Institute's alumni are mentally aligned with the programmers' views, sent out into the world to perpetuate the age-old thinking set in place by our founding fathers and members of the elite societies. Perhaps it was yet again merely a coincidence that such an institution was able to comfortably sit out the blackout of 1977. But the question remains, what exactly were they doing to bide their time? Attack number 6. Alexander Esau, 20, and Valentina Siriani, 18, were murdered on April 17, 1977. The location? 1878 Hutchinson River Parkway. It was 3 a.m., the 107th day of the year, 40 days since Virginia's murder. April 17, 1977, day 107, days left, 258. Now the ages, Alexander was 20. So we add their ages together, we have 38. Where do we get the 107? We get the 107 from the day of the year. 107 minus 38 equals 69. This may be a little hard to follow for a moment. We take the days left in the year, 258. Okay. And we add it by 38, which was their ages. leaves us with 296. See that? Now, this is where it comes into play. This happened 1878, Hutchison River Parkway. Hutchison River Parkway is 296. So we had the days left in the year plus their birth date equals 296. Add 2 plus 9 plus 6. Again with the 17. If you combine their names, Esau Siriani, the old familiar 47 is back. 1977 has a value of 24. If we break down the address 1878, it equals 24. So with these two 24s equals 48. Add 8 plus 4 is 12. 21. Now this happened after 3 a.m. and it was said what was heard was fired 3 quick shots, and the police said it was at close range. There's your 33. Valentina has a value of 98. If we look at the date, April 17th and 77, we get 98. His name listed as Alexander, but we're using Alex. So, looking at Alex Esau, Esau has a value of 44. 39 for Alex. Add those numbers together, we get 83. Eight plus 3 is 11. We add the 1 plus 9 plus 6 that we got from Siriani's name, also 98. I should be more clear, I'm sorry. We add Valentina's 98, and we add her last name, Siriani, 98. So we times that by 2, we get 196. 1 plus 9 plus 6 is 7. Since we had his value, 11 and 7, what we have here, April 17th, 1977, equals 117. A new campaign was planned with the goal of taking New York, landing on Staten Island on July 2nd. Of England, General Howe's army soon swelled to over 30,000 men. Crossing to Gravesend Bay, Howe exploited the light American defenses at Jamaica Pass and succeeded in flanking Washington's army. The resulting Battle of Long Island on August 26th, 27th, saw the Americans beaten and forced to retreat. Falling back to fortifications at Brooklyn Heights, the Americans awaited the British assault. Here is a map from the New York campaign during the Revolutionary War in 1776. The red lines show the British troops, and the blue shows Washington's fortifications. And here is showing a map of New York City. The red circles represent where the attacks took place. Now if we look at this map, the furthermost red circle at the very top represents where David Berkowitz was living during the time of his arrest. And if we apply the same principles we did earlier in regards to the Masonic Lodge floor plan and the overlaying of the drawing included in the letters, we can see an interesting pattern forming here. At the very top of that triangle, in the bottom left, that's Gravesend Bay. Stacy Moskowitz was the victim who died at that location. But if we look back in history, we can see that is where the British troops started their invasion. In attack number 7, Sal Lupo and Judy Placido were shot June 26, 1977 at 45th Road and 211th Street at 3 a.m. 3 times. It was the 177th day of the year, 211 days after the attacks on Demacy and Lamino. 47 weeks since the first attack, and including the day Judy and Sal were shot, that would make it 333 days since the first shooting in Pelham Bay. However, before I get into this, it is quite complicated, so I have to show you some backstory. This is a picture of Sal Lupo. Looks pretty happy with himself. Survived a bullet. We'll never know his involvement. We're going to look at Placida, because Judy Placido was the victim's name. Placida is a surname of Venus. The temple of Venus, Placida, stood in present-day Galatia. Now, if we look at Venus in Freemasonry, Venus is the second of the 4 terrestrial planets from the Sun, and is, after the Sun and the Moon, the brightest object in the sky, being 15 times brighter than Sirius A, the most prominent star. We call the planet Venus the morning star when it appears in the east at sunrise, and the evening star when it appears in the west at sunset, although the ancients called it Hesperus in the evening, and Phosphorus, or Lucifer, in the morning. Because of the distances of the respective orbits of Venus and the Earth from the Sun, Venus is never visible more than 3 hours before sunrise, nor 3 hours after sunset. Perhaps a reference back to their magical number 33. Perhaps. It was said that they were sitting in a maroon Cadillac outside the Elephas Disco, which means the elephant. Quite coincidental. Now, on with the number. Now that you've had a little backdrop. June 26, 1977. As I said, the 177th day of the year. Days left in the year, 188. Sal Lupo has a value of 33. His last name, 44. Lucky for Lupo, though, he was unscathed. Judy Placido, however, has a reverse ordinal value of 177. Day of the year, June 26th, the 177th day. Further on Judy, Placido has a value of 33. Reverse full reduction, her whole name has a value of 69. It was said she was shot 3 times at 3 a.m. It happened on 45 Road and 211th. We know 211th, that was the day of the first murders. The first incident. 4 plus 5 is 9. 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. Again with a 13. It happened at the Elephas Disco, Bayside. Single reduction value 109, which is also June 26, 77. June 2, 6. Written out in reverse ordinal has a value of 110. Bayside, Queens has a value full reduction of 56. We see that in the date up here. Combine their names, Lupo, Placido, again with the 56. Bayside, Queens has a single reduction value of 74. 47 and 74 like to pop up quite a bit. We look at Lucifer and Venus. It also has a value of 74 in full reduction, which is also known as 11. Now, if we take the day of the year, 177, the days left in the year, 188, multiply 177, subtract 177 from 188, leftover value of 11. 11. Lucifer, Venus, and Placido has a reverse full reduction value of 109. Venus and Judy, because Venus is always presented as a feminine. This was most likely a ritual involving Lucifer and Venus. We get a value of 33. And if we look at sacrifice, Placido, there's your time. Reverse full reduction 128, which was the date it happened. August the 10th, 1977, David Berkowitz was apprehended. There were 2 officers on the roof of 35 Pine Street in Yonkers, and 2 officers were stationed on the street. They were joined by a Craig Glassman, Berkowitz's downstairs neighbor, who also happened to be the Westchester Sheriff's deputy. Glassman at one point supposedly had an incident outside of his home a few weeks prior. Someone, he claimed Berkowitz, set a bucket of 20 .22 caliber bullets ablaze outside of his front door. Craig Glassman was assumed after the case was closed to be the same Craig referred to in one of Sam's letters. Glassman made it his absolute priority to be on the scene for David's arrest. I mean, the police didn't even know at that point what Berkowitz even looked like. And Craig and made sure they grabbed the right man. The police even pulled their guns on Glassman after seeing him snooping around David's car and walking away afterwards. It is quite plausible for Glassman to have been involved much deeper than most even knew. Craig made every effort possible after Berkowitz was behind bars to try and cash in on the case as well. Craig Glassman was murdered in the early 90s under very suspicious circumstances. So whatever he may have knew, most likely died with him. Berkowitz had been arrested without a warrant, but David showed no resistance to the officers. They tried to say they had probable cause for it, however, due to a plainly visible, in the front seat of his unlocked car, a bag with his .45 caliber semi-automatic rifle exposed and a tag marked D. Berkowitz. As if that wasn't ridiculous enough, after he arrived at the police headquarters in Manhattan, they asked him where the crucial .44 caliber bulldog revolver was. Apparently the police had forgot to obtain it back at the scene of his arrest and had to quickly go to retrieve it. The Mayor Beam was awakened and told of the arrest, and even without a confession or a formal charge laid, issued this statement to the public of New York. The people of New York can rest easily this morning because the police have captured the man known as Son of Sam. A very bold statement without a lick of proof. Seems they had been prepared for this for quite some time. Even many of the people gathered at police headquarters just didn't believe Berkowitz to be the man, not fitting the descriptions and seemingly just appeared out of nowhere. Police awaited the mayor's arrival and promptly displayed for the press David's guns and belongings. David was upstairs being informally questioned by 10 of New York's finest detectives. That 30-minute off-the-record discussion was never recorded or shared with anyone else. 6 deceased victims, 7 wounded in a span of 1 year, and it took the police 30 minutes to get what they needed. If that isn't enough to expose the incompetency of the police involved in the case, then nothing is. They wanted blood. The public wanted blood. David Berkowitz was chosen to be the dead man walking. Immediately, police released loads of information on Berkowitz's supposed insanity and motive, and the press ate it up. Guilty alone and crazy, without even a formal confession. The lead detective, Timothy Dowd, had already marked the case closed. Now all they needed was David's blessing. August 11th, 3:28 a.m., David's confessions begin. Some say Berkowitz had rehearsed his lines and was an active conspirator. He knew enough details to satisfy basic questioning. The questioning was said to be very superficial and fairly smooth sailing for all involved. There were many factual errors in his statement. However, for a crazy person, David seemed to do just fine. As the police later said, he gave detailed blow-by-blow descriptions of the crimes. Perhaps the hour he spent with the Baptist Church female member that came to visit him helped put his mind at ease.
Although Berkowitz had confessed to the attacks, there were fears that a trial might see him found not guilty by reason of insanity.
After several weeks, he told me that he was feeling increasingly depressed, regretful, guilty for what he had done.
Berkowitz was allowed to consult with a preacher.
There was a Baptist woman. She saw him And I'll never forget what happened. She saw him alone. He would ask her a question. She would then talk to God. God would then ostensibly answer her, and she would repeat the answer to David. And when they came out an hour later, she went on her way. He walked down the hall towards me. He had this incredible glow on his face that he had just met God again. And so he came out of this informing me and his attorneys that he was going to plead guilty. And nothing could change his mind. Attorneys spent hours with him. I was present several times, tried to convince him to plead insanity.
On the 5th of August 1978, Berkowitz appeared in court.
Everybody was surprised when Berkowitz walked into court, and instead of demanding a trial, he pled guilty to everything.
It was said after she left, he was more than willing to confess, even by some accounts, glowing with joy. I suppose as far as the police and press were concerned, she seemed to have handled things nicely. It is also important to note that on the day David Berkowitz was scheduled to go to trial, he had an apparent chaotic outbreak in the courthouse. At 11 a.m., he entered the courtroom in a frenzy. He was chanting, "Stacy is a whore. Stacy is a whore. I'll shoot them all." Looking at Strong's Concordance, number 996, we see it states, "To ask for assistance for delivery of much needed aid, as well as an interval or a space between." Perhaps David was informed to play the role if something seemed out of sorts, or was simply told what to say to the judge. So he was aware that now was not the proper time. The judge postponed the trial, pending a mental evaluation. That way they could give the highly appointed psychiatrist more time to prepare Berkowitz further. One doctor in particular to mention was a Dr. Richard L. Weidenbacher. Weidenbacher served in Vietnam in the Navy Medical Corps as a psychiatrist with the 1st Marine Division. Many are well aware of the experimentation on American soldiers in Korea and Vietnam. Monica Kim, in her book, The Interrogation Rooms of the Korean War, writes, "Numerous booths about 4x4 were constructed. Each booth contained a small field desk and 2 chairs. Ships returning home to America became floating interrogation centers for the counterintelligence corps of the U.S. Army. Michael Cornwall, one of the POW repatriates, said, 'You could call what happened on the ships coming home debriefing or an interrogation, but it lasted all day long, some 8 hours.' The soldier, who was supposedly a weapon of American warfare, had now become the target of an American military intelligence. So one could assume that Dr. Weidenbacher was more than prepared for such a mental evaluation. After all, the authorities had no issues with David being presented as the poster boy for the .44 caliber killer. And Berkowitz was in no position by this point to make any objections. So we come to the final shooting, number 8. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante, both 20, were shot July 31st, 1977 at Bay 14th Street, Bath Beach Park. The shooter stood 3 feet away and fired 4 times. It was the 212th day of the year, 153 days left in the year, and 367 days since the first shooting. We're going to look at Berkowitz, the last name. There's that 47 again, reverse single. There's a 7. Let's go down here and look at Robert. Has a value of 33, full reduction. Robert's license plate, if it was his car he was driving, the victim's plate anyway, as far as I could tell from photos, 674 CZ6 1717, or you could write that as 88. Robert wasn't killed. However, his vision suffered considerable damage. Look at the date, July 31st, can be written as 7/4. They were both aged 20. 4 shots were fired, reported in the news. 2. Break this down. 20 turns to 2, so 2 plus 2 equals 4. Number of shots fired. 44. Now if we put in Robert and Stacy, again, we get that 47. Also, another way of writing July 31st, 1977, 88. 88. Reverse full reduction. 88. This happened at Shore Parkway. Reverse single reduction. 74. That was in Gravesend Bay. That final moment in time, the last attack for the .44 caliber killer. Take the 74s, the 47s, because they all have a value of 11 times 3 again. 33. Now if you notice, this was the 212th day of the year. The first shooting was on the 211th day of the year, and everybody wondered in the news, why all of a sudden was somebody shot in Brooklyn? Nobody could figure out why the last victims were in Brooklyn. If we look at Brooklyn, it has an English ordinal value of 112. That's the mirror of 211. And we know, because we saw this, 44 Bulldog Revolver, New York. Single reduction value of 211. The first day, reverse full reduction, 212. The last day. It mirrored, and it ended. And as I said, it was 367 days since the first shooting. Then we take 367, we minus 212. It equals 155 days. In the first shooting, on the 211th day, it was 155. No, I appreciate you taking the time to bear with me as I stumbled through, showing you the number values involved with this infamous case. It's been 42 years. I'm going to try to sum it up and explain. If we look at the days of the year in order, I'm talking about the first incident was the 211th day. The last incident was the 212th day. Think of the Gregorian calendar. We're going to start on the Gregorian calendar. Sunday is the first day of the week. There was 8 separate shooting incidents. Let's look at those numbers. Hypothetically, let's just place them as the days of the week. Now we're going to break them down. 211 is 4, 297 is 18, 332 is 8, 30 becomes 3, 67 becomes 13, 107, 8, 177, 15, 212 becomes 5. You notice how this entire week was but one day to whoever finally crafted this ritual. Now, take the sum of all these numbers. This is what we're left with. 74. Perhaps you recall me showing it off so many times. Practically every scene that this shooting occurred. Further, break this down. 4, 18 becomes 9, 8 becomes 8, 3 becomes 3, 13 becomes 4, 8 is 8, 15 is 6, 5 is 5. Add the sum. We're left with 47. The mirror of 74. Perhaps some of you are aware of a certain day. Happy 4th of July. Good old Uncle Sam. This bicentennial celebration. 200 years in the making. Sam needed blood to stay young.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our documentary about David Berkowitz with the Son of Sam case. We wanted to share his testimony with you so he can be a hope and a light to you. Below we will share his website that he does not profit from and other productions that he's worked on with various churches and his outreach for Christ. He works with many people behind prison walls and brings so much hope and peace in their life through Jesus Christ. My testimony by David Berkowitz. My name is David Berkowitz, and I am a prison inmate who has been incarcerated for more than 41 years. I have been sentenced to prison for the rest of my life. My criminal case is well known and was called the Son of Sam shootings. It was 31 years ago when I was living in a cold and lonely prison cell that God got a hold of my life. Here is my story of hope. The horror begins. Eventually, I crossed that invisible line of no return. After years of mental torment, behavioral issues, deep inner struggles, and my own rebellious ways, I became the criminal that, at the time, it seemed as if it was my destiny to become. Looking back, it was all a horrible nightmare, and I would do anything if I could undo everything that happened. 6 people lost their lives, many others suffered at my hand, and will continue to suffer for a lifetime. I am so sorry for that. In 1978, I was sentenced to about 365 consecutive years, virtually burying me alive behind prison walls. When I first entered the prison system, I was placed in isolation. I was then sent to a psychiatric hospital because I was declared temporarily insane. Eventually, I was sent to other prisons, including the infamous Attica. As with many inmates, life in prison is a struggle. I have had my share of problems, hassles, and fights. At one time, I almost lost my life when another inmate cut my throat. Yet, all through this, and I did not realize it until later, God had his loving hands on me. Hope was coming. 10 years into my prison sentence and feeling despondent and without hope, another inmate came up to me one day as I was walking the prison yard on a cold winter's night. He introduced himself and began to tell me that Jesus Christ loved me and wanted to forgive me. Although I knew he meant well, I mocked him because I did not think that God would ever forgive me or that he would want anything to do with me. Still, this man persisted, and we became friends. His name was Rick, and we would walk the yard together. Little by little, he would share with me about his life and what he believed Jesus had done for him. He kept reminding me that no matter what a person did, Christ stood ready to forgive if that individual would be willing to turn from the bad things they were doing and would put their full faith and trust in Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross by dying for our sins. He gave me a Gideon's Pocket Testament and asked me to read the Psalms. I did every night. I would read from them. And it was at this time that the Lord was quietly melting my stone-cold heart. A new life beginning. One night I was reading from Psalm 34. I came upon the 6th verse, which says, "This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him, and saved him from all his troubles." It was at that moment in 1987 that I began to pour out my heart to God. Everything seemed to hit me at once, the guilt from what I did, the disgust at what I had become. Late that night, in my cold cell, I got down on my knees and I began to cry out to Jesus Christ. I told him that I was sick and tired of doing evil. I asked Jesus to forgive me for all my sins. I spent a good while on my knees praying to him. When I got up, it felt as if a very heavy but invisible chain that had been around me for so many years was broken. A peace flooded over me. I did not understand what was happening, but in my heart, I just knew that my life somehow was going to be different. I have also worked as the chaplain's clerk, and I also have a letter writing ministry. In addition, the Lord has opened ways for me to share with millions via TV programs such as Insider Edition. A decade of freedom. More than 11 years have gone by since I had that first talk with the Lord. So many good things have happened in my life since. Jesus Christ has allowed me to start an outreach ministry right here in the prison, where I have been given permission by prison officials to work in the special needs unit, where men who have various emotional and coping problems are housed. I can pray with them as we read our Bibles together. I get the chance to show them a lot of brotherly love and compassion. I have also worked as the chaplain's clerk, and I also have a letter writing ministry. In addition, the Lord has opened ways for me to share with millions via TV programs such as Inside Edition in 1993 and A&E Investigative Reporter in 97. What he has done in my life as well is to warn others about the dangers of getting involved in the occult. I have also shared my testimony on several Christian TV programs such as the 700 Club in 97, the Coral Ridge Hour, Dr. James Kennedy, and on Larry King Live in 99. For all these opportunities, I am most thankful, and I do not feel I deserve this. Here's your chance, friend. Here's your chance to get things right with God. The Bible says if you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, and if you believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart mankind believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession of salvation is made. Romans 10:9-10. So, believe in your heart that these words from the Bible are true. Please consider what I am saying. I beg you with all my heart to place your faith in Christ right now. Tomorrow is promised to no one. You see, I'm not sharing this message to simply tell you an interesting story. Rather, I want you to taste the goodness of God in my life, a man who was once a devil worshiper and a murderer, to show you that Jesus Christ is about forgiveness, hope, and change. I was involved in the occult and I got burned. I became a cruel killer and threw away my life as well as destroyed the lives of others. Now I have discovered that Christ is my answer and my hope. He broke the chains of mental confusion and depression that had me bound. Today I have placed my life in his hands. I only wish I knew Jesus before all these crimes happened. They would have not happened. May God bless everyone who is reading this message. With love in Christ, David Berkowitz. This truly is an inspiring message from somebody that has been involved in these things. I hope that people take this into account. The occult is real. These evil things exist around us. Spiritual warfare is real. And you can be saved in Jesus Christ no matter what. God bless you.
At one time, these hands were being used by the devil to destroy. But I thank God today for his great mercy that these hands are being used to touch lives. Sometimes I just get so happy and so thankful of what Jesus Christ has done in my life. Here I am, a murderer, a man locked behind prison walls now for 19 years. And yet God has shown me that he was willing to forgive me and give me a whole new life.
Loving people, counseling people, warning people, change. That's what it's all about.
Today, God is using me here in the prison to minister to other men, to give them a message of hope, to give them a message of encouragement, to let them know that Jesus Christ wants to help them, that Jesus Christ can set them free from sin's power, that Jesus Christ can give them a life, that Jesus Christ can rebuild their broken lives, and he will put the pieces back together. If God will save someone like me, a murderer, and make me into a minister today, he'll do that for anybody. He can say nobody is beyond the hope of God's outstretched hands. Nobody is beyond the hope of God's love. At one time, I was called the son of Sam. Today, God has said, you are now the son of hope. That's my new name, Son of Hope, because I tell everyone that there is hope in God.
In closing of this documentary, I would like to read from Romans 16, verse 17 to 20. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. For your obedience is come abroad unto all men. I am glad therefore on your behalf, but yet I would have you wise unto that which is good and simple concerning evil. And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Amen.
When I was arrested, the police asked me, "Oh, you're son of Sam?" I said, "Well, yes." And I was very respectful to them. Interestingly, how the story changes over time, and you see all these embellishments that come in. One of the things that keep getting said over and over again is whenever this thing is repeated, which is a lot, often, when I was first arrested, the police asked me, are you son of Sam? And I said, yes. and I was, you know, very cooperative and respectful to them, but I never said, so what took you so long? And over again, you read articles and all these professors and all these people always say the same, oh, Berkowitz said, well, so what took you so long? As if I were teasing them. But if I had done that, they would have beat me up pretty good, because I would have been just, you know, you can't mouth off to an officer like a wise guy, and they would have slapped me around. The fact that everything went so, you know, peacefully showed that I never said that. In fact, I asked a friend, again, Maury Terry, a journalist who had been following the case from the very beginning. I said, Maury, could you please check to see from early reports that are in the papers or in the media if I actually said, so what took you so long? He checked and got back to me a few weeks later and says, no, that's not recorded anywhere. That's just an embellishment that happened. And it may sound like a minor thing, like, so what's the big deal of that one sentence? But it changes the whole picture. It made me look like some kind of smart aleck or something like that.